Hi everybody. It's been quite a while since I've just sat down and visited and talked about what's going on in my life other than humanitarian missionary work. So today I'm just going to tell you what's been going on. One of the hardest parts about serving a mission is you're away from home when loved ones pass away. And this last week my aunt Velma passed away, and well, I've had a lot of emotions over it this last week, more than I thought that I would. My Aunt Velma was 99 years old. We're happy for her, but you know, it does not matter how old a person is. You still lose them, and it still pulls at your heart, and all those emotions and all those feelings and love that you feel for these people, it just comes to the surface. And I had kind of a meltdown last week when I heard that she had passed away. She was so sweet. She was sweet, but she was also a tough cookie. You know, I love those kind of people, sweet and tough. Anyway, one of the things that my Aunt Velma would say, and if I heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times, well, maybe not 1,000, but I've heard it a lot, and that is, you kids stay out of my garden. You can run through my house, but don't you run through my garden. That is Aunt Velma. She took a lot of pride in her garden, and she worked very hard in it, and she didn't want a bunch of little kids out there running around knocking plants over in her garden. But it was okay if we ran through her house, and believe me, we did. We used to run through my Aunt Velma's house. I don't know how she put up with us kids, but she did. She did. We would go visit my grandma, which was just up the road from Aunt Velma, and every time we'd go to Grandma's house, of course, we had to go to Aunt Velma's house and play with the cousins, and so that means Aunt Velma inherited us during the summertime, and we'd spent a lot of time with her, and she treated us so good. And so my heart, there's a lot of memories that are flooding and emotions that are flooding me this week as I think about the wonderful times that we had playing up there in Indian Bench with my cousins and Grandma and Grandpa. They were a big influence on my life. I just love them to death. Well, not only did I get the news that my aunt had passed away, but Chad received word that his Aunt Eileen passed away a few days later as well. Chad is from a large family, his extended family. He's got a lot of cousins and a lot of aunts and uncles. And that is one of the things that I love about Chad, is our families were so similar. And his aunts and uncles have always treated me just like one of them. I was a part of their family, and that is something that I have really appreciated about Chad's aunts and uncles and cousins, is I just feel like I'm one of them. Even though we are missing out on being with the family at these funerals, Chad and I would not trade our mission for anything. We know that we are here for a reason, and we wouldn't trade it for anything. But that's kind of comes along with the territory. You have to make some sacrifices in order to do what we're doing, and I know that we are being blessed beyond measure for doing it, and we just wouldn't trade it for anything. And our family back home wouldn't want us to. Our family wouldn't ask us to do anything different than what we're doing. The support we receive from back home, it makes it all possible for what we're able to do out here right now. The other thing, a few months ago, my brother-in-law passed away, and I haven't talked about that since. I know Bonnie and Ellie talked about it a little bit, but that was really sad news to hear about my brother-in-law passing. And Bob was such a good man. He came along in my sister's life at just the right time. Isn't that funny how things like that happen? Just the right time. And to our family, Bob was a knight in shining armor. He was a horseman too, by the way, but he rode in on his horse and he swooped up my sister, and he just took good care of her, and he helped raise her family. One of the things that Bino Bonnie has talked about was one of the things that impressed us with Bob. It's romantic to us, but to you, you might say, what? That's romantic, but it was romantic to my sister. Bob bought my sister a deep freeze, and he filled it with meat. This is when they were first starting dating, and he wanted to do something nice for her, and she had a bunch of kids that she was trying to take care of and feed, and he saw the need. And so that really impressed us, that he saw her needs and he met them. And we'll just always be grateful for Bob. He was a wonderful brother-in-law, and he was a good uncle, and my kids loved Bob, Uncle Bob. We know that death is not the end, but we still mourn. We know that they've gone on to a better place. We know that. We know that life continues beyond the grave, but it still hurts. It still hurts. You still feel their loss. I've talked to my sister regularly, and it's just almost more than she can stand. She says the loneliness is just more than she can hardly take. Being away from home during these times is probably one of the hardest parts about serving a mission. But we were able to view both funerals on Zoom, and you know, we couldn't do that 3-4 years ago. Before COVID, we weren't watching funerals and having these FaceTime, being able to FaceTime each other, Marco Polo each other like we do now. What a blessing that has been to be able to do that. It would be nice to be there, but this is pretty close. It's second best, I guess I would say, to be able to be to the funeral. But my oldest brother was there, and he showed us the cemetery where my aunt was buried, which is the cemetery that many of my family members are buried there. And he spanned the cemetery there in Parker, Idaho. And I thought, you know, when I was a little girl, there was a lot of generations left to be buried in front of me. My parents, my aunts, my uncles, my grandparents. And the thought came to me, I've got an aunt and an uncle left on my dad's side, and an aunt on my mom's side. And then that generation is gone. And the next generation is mine, my siblings and I. And that just puts it into perspective, that how fast the time goes. When my brother was showing me my cousins there, you know, in my head, I still think of my cousins as young. And I look at my cousins now and I think, gosh dang, we're getting old. My cousins, you're getting old, you know. But that's life. It's better to get old than not, right? Anyway, I just wanted to share some of these thoughts that I've been having with you. I've probably rambled on. I don't know if I've made any sense going from one story to another, but that's the way I roll. That's just the way I am. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being such a big support to Chad and I on our missions. Thank you for your kind comments, and we will see you again next week. Bye-bye.